Ladies, gentlemen, and glorious gender non-conforming gremlins, hello again, I am Blunty, and apparently we know what Sony PlayStation's very next absolute embarrassment of a failure of a product is going to be, and it's going to be a handheld gaming device. Just the day before yesterday, I put up a video about a new handheld gaming PC coming in from Asus and their ROG sub-brand, a powerful and seemingly extremely carefully considered product that, as long as I get the pricing right, would mean decimating the Steam Deck's consumer mindshare as the core handheld gaming PC option. Perhaps. And in that video, I had a throwaway line about the Logitech G Cloud device. Can't say it without giggling. It's a device met with almost universal derision, mockery, and at best, indifference by the PC gamer market. And it met with anywhere from snark-filled scoffing to active and brutal resentment aimed at Logitech and their continuing attempts to build a gaming-based brand identity, very specifically because it was just nothing more than a rather underpowered, anemic Android tablet with a 7-inch display and built-in game controllers. And its extremely middling processor power meant it wasn't actually a gaming device in its own right at all. It could barely run even middling Android games all on its own. It was instead specifically designed to be a remote unit for game streaming, and for something so dirt basic, it was also overpriced and under-specced. Well now, here comes Sony with their next failure of a product. According to a report from Insider Gaming, it's codenamed the Q Lite, and it will apparently be little more than what greybeard nerds would have called a dumb terminal back in the day. Following on from the extremely poorly selling PlayStation VR 2 units, which by all reports is selling less than 20% of the predicted pace that Sony wanted for it, the so-called Q Lite will also be another PlayStation 5 accessory, not a product in its own right, just merely an accessory that cannot live without an umbilical cord to Sony's expensive console. Because unlike even the Logitech G Cloud, it seems the Q Lite won't even be able to stream from the cloud. It will instead exclusively be slaved to PlayStation's Remote Play feature, making the Q Lite a complete paperweight of a device unless you've got your PlayStation 5 running and both devices online, and connected to very solid internet services. Now, let's be fair about this. PlayStation's Remote Play functionality, which has been around since 2006 and was one of the first of its kind as a matter of fact, Sony led the way with this technology. It came out with the PlayStation 3 for crying out loud, that's how far back it goes. And I was in fact among the very first people to try it out with a pre-release preview, thanks to the PlayStation Australia team, back when I was talking to those people. I remember being very impressed with how well it worked. 5 years later, I also remember using that now matured service on the Xperia Play in my review time with that device, which at one time the press was calling the PlayStation phone. It was a fully featured and proper Android phone, which also happened to have a slide-out panel with a fully functioning PlayStation controller on board, including 2 touchpads serving as the analog sticks. I quite liked that product and even requested to be able to keep the review unit they sent me. They didn't let me keep it, but that product was also a massive failure in the market, with Sony abandoning the concept and cancelling any plans to release a leaked follow-up device, which was already well into development apparently, absolutely completely. They just went, well, that didn't work, and walked away from it, never tried again. At the same time, the PlayStation brand proper, not Xperia, their mobile phones, would face tepid consumer reaction to the PlayStation Vita, which also became a very costly flop for Sony. So after that particular string of failures and embarrassments, Sony stopped even trying to force their way into the handheld gaming market, and by all reports was utterly disinterested at a corporate level in returning to the portable gaming arena at all. Ever. That is, of course, until now. But just like Logitech, Sony are, once more, loading up the wrong ammunition. Seems to have chosen foot bullets instead. The product codenamed Q Lite will have a 1080p resolution screen capping out at 60 frames per second, which, considering it only works with Remote Play, is literally all that would be useful anyway. But the screen is also relatively large for a handheld, 8 inches apparently, and 1080p on an 8-inch screen that close to your face is not going to blow you away, let me tell you that. There's a reason not even phones use that resolution anymore, even on their smaller screens. And according to the article, the device sports adaptive triggers for haptic feedback and will include what you would come to expect from a handheld: volume buttons, speakers, and an audio input jack. That would be a microphone jack. Probably also headphones as well, although the article doesn't mention that specifically. All of this is extremely obvious, doesn't take any insider knowledge. Of course, it will need to be feature complete and compatible with the PlayStation 5's controller's functions, because that's literally the only thing it can do. That's all it's useful for. It has to support everything the PlayStation 5 controller can do. In addition to having sort of speakers and headphones so you can hear the game. Okay, I've been taking a shit on Sony this whole time, but just for the record, I would be on board with a real handheld gaming device from them. I actually quite liked the Vita, as a matter of fact. Heck, it was only a fistful of months ago I bought fresh batteries for my own Vita, which I still have, and took it out into the world again. Admittedly, that was for a video on using its cameras for photography, just for nostalgia's and yuck sakes, but still, it was fun to have the thing live again, and man, it's, at the time, absolute class-leading, and I mean class-leading OLED screen, still holds up damn well. And, you know, these days you're all used to hearing OLED as an acronym, but back in the day, that was brand new technology. OLED was something you had to explain to people. But when it performed so poorly in the actual market, teamed up with the embarrassing failures of the Xperia Play devices, and dashed any hopes that PlayStation gamers had for a Vita 2, I was disappointed too. I wanted to see what Sony would do evolving the Vita, learning what they learned from the first-gen device and making it even better, but they just walked away, too embarrassed. It was a failure so intense it scared Sony away from handhelds for at least the next decade, and for them to come back at us with what is reportedly nothing more than a dumb terminal for the PlayStation 5, a shell completely slaved to the PS5, I just can't fathom what Sony are thinking. Unless this thing is like crazy cheap, and I mean cheap, and I mean it costs less than 2 AAA game titles, for example, cheap, somewhere around $200, $220 tops. If it's literally just the PlayStation 5 controller tech with a simple Wi-Fi chip and low-power CPU with just enough grunt to decode the incoming remote play video streams, I just can't see how it's going to sell well otherwise. If Sony price it like a Sony device, nobody's going to buy this. You know why? Because any, and I mean any PlayStation gamer right now who currently wants to play their PlayStation 5 content remotely can already do that on their phone. They've been able to do that for 3 generations of PlayStation devices. Android or Apple, even years-old model remote play actually works really great on them. And it's not like Snap-on controllers aren't both extremely plentiful and easy to obtain these days, even officially PlayStation branded ones. And to be fair, most of them are absolute crap, but some are actually good controllers. So who is this product for? Who except idiot, die-hard fanboy, brand slaves, and tech YouTubers looking to cover it for shits and giggles would want, much less need, this device? Nintendo taught. Valve understood. Asus understood. Countless smaller brands on the Steam Deck Me Too bandwagon understood. Gamers do not want to be slaved to umbilical cords, to other devices, and constant internet connections just to game handheld. We want actual freedom and choice and flexibility. And a dumb terminal slaved to the PlayStation 5 exclusively does not provide that. It's been demonstrated in the market already. Every single so-called cloud-based gaming device, and even several of the big cloud-based gaming services, have already failed and continue to fail. But Sony's notorious arrogance and deep-seated need to absolutely slave their consumers to their whims and nobody else's will not let them see it. So unless there's a lot more to this product than these leaks and reports have alleged, this will be another marketplace embarrassment for Sony, hot on the heels of the failing PlayStation VR 2, which, despite reviewing well, as I predicted, on its own merits, it's good hardware, the market is demonstrating gamers do not want a VR product so limited, so slaved, and entirely dependent on another product. Certainly not a device priced even higher than the console it needs to function at all. I called all of these issues out already in preview and post-launch videos about the PlayStation VR, and I was right, because it's obvious. So again, if the device is only what is stated so far, unless the Q Lite, or whatever it winds up being called, is extremely aggressively priced, low enough to sell as an actual novelty, which it is, or gift, I just can't see how it will survive in the market, much less being even a moderately successful product. Once more, I was 100% right about the miserable sales of the PlayStation VR 2. Despite the petty protest, denials, and ad hominem abuse I laughed my way through from the fingertips of PlayStation fanboys furiously tip-tapping away at their keyboards at me. Let's see if I'm right about this too. I could be dead wrong. We know very little about the device. It's very thin on the ground details at the moment, but from what we do know, I'm feeling pretty confident in predicting another failure and embarrassment for Sony, but I guess we'll see. Thank you for watching. I am Blunty, and thank you as always to the patrons scrolling up above there, all of whom I encourage to give me their money and not spend it on PlayStation's Q Lite when it comes out. Tell you what, you give me the money, I'll buy it and review it so you don't have to waste your money on it. How about that? Deal? All right, deal.